Clearly, the time has come to re-examine our counter-narcotics efforts here, at home, and throughout the Americas. H.R. 2134 does just that by creating an independent commission to evaluate U.S. policies and programs aimed at reducing illicit drug supply in the Americas and the demand for these drugs here at home.
Well, as I said at the hearing, that we've seen for 40 years probably, since we've had war on drugs and trying to help other countries combat drug trade, that we've had very little success.
It's the biggest question that I get when I go to Latin America. Of any other question, the question is always, if people know that this policy isn't working, why don't you change it? Well, I think this commission is a step in the right direction, and I think it's encouraging. I think it opens debate. Talking to members of Congress, even members of Congress that have been seen as hardline on the drug issue and advocates of the drug policy, many private conversations, they recognize that it hasn't worked very well. And yet, politically, nobody is really prepared to move very far. And I think this commission could achieve that result, is beginning to move.
It's obvious that the so-called war on drugs is a failure. It's true that in some countries, like take the case of Colombia, the public security is better off now. I have no doubt that for the citizen, the situation now is better because it's more safe. But the production of cocaine in Colombia is not being reduced.
The question is, how do you stop this? There's a lot of money in it, obviously. There's a lot of profit in it. And if the drug cartels are harassed in a certain place, they'll just move elsewhere. Well, the answer is fairly easy. It's you reduce demand for the drugs.
This is what we call the paradigm shift, to put much more effort in reducing the demand than in trying to limit the production. Because since there is a market, the market evaluates so highly the drugs, it's almost impossible to fight production.
The statistic, which I read at the beginning of the hearing, said that we in the United States comprise only 5% of the world's population, but yet 17% of the world's drug users. And there's something wrong with that.
You know, different people at the State Department seem to be running the Andean program and the Merit Initiative, not the same people. And I still don't know how the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative will be combined into these operations, or who will oversee in the entire strategy. This hearing opens the question of how best to manage our Western Hemisphere counter-narcotics effort at state and throughout the federal government.
Well, one of the problems in changing drug policy is that there are a lot of interests and a lot of bureaucracies that have built up over decades that have a stake in this policy. And it's not only that they all have their separate agendas, and it's very fragmented, the machinery, but it's also very hard to change. So I think there really has to be, in order for any significant change, this can't be a piecemeal bureaucratic sort of agency by agency step. There needs to be an articulation of a new framework, a new strategy. And then the changes in terms of coordination and bureaucracy will follow. We're in a time where we have to look at whether things are working, and this is one policy that's been in place for a while that doesn't seem to be producing very good results despite a lot of money spent, a lot of political resources, and it's also caused a lot of irritation in U.S.-Latin American relations.